Imagine your body as a perfectly tuned orchestra. Every hormone plays its part in harmony, creating the rhythm of your metabolism steady, balanced, alive. Now picture something crashing into that concert hall. Not a mistake, but chaos. A gang of intruders storms the stage, knocking over instruments, silencing the music, turning order into noise. That's what inflammation does inside your body. It disrupts the delicate system that keeps your energy flowing. And when this disruption hits your fat tissue, it sets the stage for something far more dangerous than you think. This is where metabolic problems begin. This is where your body slowly starts losing control, and most people don't even realize it's happening. What you're about to discover could change the way you see your metabolism and your health forever. Now, to understand what goes wrong, you first need to understand one key player in this system: insulin. Insulin is a hormone made by your pancreas, a small organ that sits on the left side of your abdomen, and despite its size, it has one of the most important jobs in your entire metabolism. Think of the food you eat as fuel. Every meal you consume gets broken down into glucose, your body's primary source of energy. That glucose enters your bloodstream, like fuel being loaded onto a delivery route. But here's the problem. Your cells can't use that fuel on their own. They need help. That's where insulin comes in. Insulin acts like a key. It unlocks your cells and allows that fuel glucose to move from your bloodstream into your muscles, your liver, and even your fat stores. This process gives your body the energy it needs to function, think, move, and survive. When insulin is working properly, everything flows smoothly. Your blood sugar stays balanced, your cells stay energized, your metabolism stays in rhythm. But this system is fragile, because the moment your body stops responding to insulin the way it should, that fuel begins to back up. And what happens next is where the real problem begins. So, what happens when your body stops responding to insulin the way it should? This is what we call insulin resistance. And it doesn't happen overnight, it builds quietly, step by step. Imagine insulin knocking on the door of your cells, trying to deliver fuel. But the cells don't open. They've become resistant. They're no longer listening. Your body notices this immediately. It thinks, maybe there's not enough insulin. So your pancreas produces more, and more, and more. But here's the problem. It's not a supply issue. It's a communication breakdown. Now you have high levels of insulin in your bloodstream, trying harder than ever, but still not getting the job done. And at the same time, glucose, the fuel your body needs, starts to pile up in your blood. It's like a traffic jam. Fuel is everywhere, but it can't get to where it's needed. So your blood sugar rises, your insulin levels rise, but inside your cells, there's still an energy shortage. And this is the dangerous paradox. You have too much fuel in your blood and not enough in your cells. This imbalance is not just a minor glitch. It's the beginning of a much larger breakdown, one that sets the stage for serious metabolic problems if nothing changes. And this is where things start to escalate. Insulin resistance doesn't just stay isolated, it becomes the foundation of something much bigger: metabolic syndrome. This is not a single disease, but a cluster of problems happening at the same time, quietly building beneath the surface. As insulin stops working effectively, your blood sugar remains elevated. Your body keeps pumping out more insulin in an attempt to compensate. Over time, this constant overload begins to affect other systems. Fat starts accumulating, especially around your abdomen, what we call visceral fat. Your blood pressure may begin to rise, cholesterol levels shift in the wrong direction, inflammation increases. Individually, each of these might seem manageable, but together, they create a dangerous pattern. This is metabolic syndrome, and if it continues unchecked, it leads to something even more serious: type 2 diabetes. At this stage, your body is no longer just struggling, it's overwhelmed. The pancreas, after working overtime for years, starts to lose its ability to keep up. Blood sugar levels climb even higher. Energy regulation breaks down. And the most alarming part? This process often happens silently. No pain, no clear warning signs, just gradual damage over time. What begins as a small disruption in insulin signaling can turn into a full-scale metabolic crisis, one that affects millions of people, often without them even knowing it. So what actually causes this breakdown to begin? One of the biggest and most overlooked drivers of insulin resistance is something incredibly common in modern life: a sedentary lifestyle. In simple terms, it means sitting a lot. Now, This isn't about laziness. In fact, many people who sit all day are working harder than ever on laptops, in meetings, on their phones, but your body doesn't interpret effort the way your mind does. To your metabolism, sitting still for hours sends a very clear signal: energy demand is low. And when energy demand is low, your cells become less responsive to insulin. Think about your muscles. They are one of the largest consumers of glucose in your body. But when you're not moving, your muscles aren't asking for fuel. So even when insulin is present, there's less need to pull glucose out of the bloodstream. Over time, this lack of movement trains your body into a state of resistance. Your cells stop responding efficiently, your blood sugar begins to creep upward, and your pancreas starts working harder to compensate. This is why even people who look healthy on the outside can still develop insulin resistance. Because it's not just about how you look, it's about how often your body is being activated. Movement isn't optional, it's a signal your metabolism depends on. But movement is only part of the story. There's another powerful system inside your body that most people never think about, yet it plays a massive role in insulin resistance. It's called your gut microbiome. Inside your digestive system live trillions of bacteria, around 39 trillion, in fact. Most of them are concentrated in your large intestine, especially in an area called the cecum. And while that might sound strange, these bacteria are not your enemies. In many ways, they are your partners. Think of them like a hidden community working for you behind the scenes. Or even better, think of them like a pet. If you have a pet at home, you feed it every day. And when you take care of it, it gives something back: loyalty, companionship, affection. Your gut bacteria work the same way. When you feed them the right foods, especially dietary fiber from whole plant-based foods, they thrive. And when they thrive, they produce substances that directly support your health. But here's the catch: if you don't feed them properly, they weaken. And when that happens, one of your body's most important defense systems against inflammation and insulin resistance begins to break down. This invisible ecosystem inside you may be one of the most powerful factors shaping your metabolism, and most people don't even realize it exists. So, what exactly happens when you feed your gut the right way? When you eat foods rich in dietary fiber, whole, plant-based foods that your body can't fully digest, something remarkable takes place. That fiber travels down into your colon, where your gut bacteria are waiting. And this is where the real magic happens. Your gut bacteria begin to break down that fiber and, in return, they produce powerful compounds called short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs. There are three main ones: acetate, butyrate, and propionate. You don't need to memorize the names, but you do need to understand what they do. These compounds act like internal messengers. They help lower inflammation throughout your body. They improve your cholesterol levels, and most importantly, they make your cells more responsive to insulin. In other words, they directly fight insulin resistance. But that's not all. These same compounds can even communicate with your brain, influencing mood, appetite, and decision-making. When your gut is healthy, your brain functions better, and that makes it easier to choose healthier behaviors. So it becomes a powerful cycle. You feed your gut bacteria with fiber. They reward you with compounds that protect your metabolism, reduce inflammation, and restore insulin sensitivity. It's not complicated, but it is incredibly powerful. And it all starts with what you choose to eat. So what does this actually look like in real life? What should you be eating to feed your gut, support your metabolism, and push your body back toward insulin sensitivity? The good news is it's not complicated, and it doesn't require exotic or expensive foods. Start with lentils. They're one of the richest sources of fiber you can find, and they're incredibly versatile. Add them to soups, stews, or simple bowls. Oatmeal is another powerful option, a simple breakfast that feeds your gut bacteria and keeps your blood sugar steady for hours. Beans, whether black beans, kidney beans, or chickpeas, are excellent for both fiber and long-lasting energy. Cook a large batch, and you've got meals ready for days. Avocado is another standout. Creamy, satisfying, and packed with fiber, it's easy to add to toast, salads, or just eat on its own. Then there are vegetables like broccoli and Brussels sprouts loaded with nutrients and gut-friendly fiber. For something lighter, raspberries offer a surprising amount of fiber in a small serving. Even popcorn, when it's minimally processed, can be a good source. And don't forget whole grains like barley. The key is simplicity and consistency. You don't need perfection. You just need to start replacing low-fiber, processed foods with real, whole options that your body and your gut actually recognize. But there's another side to this story, and it may be the most damaging of all. Ultra-processed foods. These are not foods in their natural form. They've been taken apart, refined, reassembled, and engineered inside factories into something your body barely recognizes. What starts as real food gets stripped down and rebuilt with additives, preservatives, artificial flavors, colors, and sweeteners. And while they may look appealing, bright, flavorful, convenient, they come at a cost. Because these substances don't just affect your taste buds, they directly impact your gut microbiome. Remember those trillions of bacteria working for you? Ultra-processed foods disrupt them. They reduce the diversity of healthy bacteria. They weaken the ones that produce beneficial compounds like short-chain fatty acids. And as your gut ecosystem becomes unbalanced, inflammation begins to rise. At the same time, these foods are often low in fiber and high in rapidly absorbed sugars and unhealthy fats, creating the perfect environment for insulin resistance to develop. They also promote the buildup of visceral fat, the dangerous fat stored deep in your abdomen that interferes with your metabolic system. So while these foods are designed for convenience, your body pays the price. Because the more you rely on ultra-processed foods, the more you move away from the conditions your metabolism needs to stay balanced and healthy. But how do we know this isn't just theory? This is where the science becomes impossible to ignore. Researchers around the world have been studying the impact of ultra-processed foods on metabolic health, and the results are striking. In one large study conducted in Canada, people who consumed high levels of ultra-processed foods had a 37% higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. That's not a small difference. That's a major shift in risk. Another study from the United Kingdom found something even more concerning. For every 10% increase in ultra-processed food intake, the risk of developing type 2 diabetes increased by 12%. Think about that for a moment. Just a small increase in junk food consumption leads to a measurable increase in disease risk. And then there's research from Spain, which showed that individuals with the highest intake of ultra-processed foods had up to a 53% higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to those who consumed very little. This isn't coincidence, it's a pattern. Across different countries, different populations, and different research teams, the same conclusion keeps appearing. The more ultra-processed food you eat, the higher your risk of insulin resistance and metabolic disease. This is no longer just a lifestyle choice. It's a scientifically proven pathway toward metabolic breakdown. Now, to really understand what's happening inside your body, we need to talk about fat. But not all fat is the same. Your body contains two major types, white fat and brown fat. White fat is the kind most people are familiar with. It sits under your skin, shapes your body, cushions your organs, and helps store energy for later use. In normal amounts, it's not the enemy. In fact, it plays important roles in hormone regulation, including the release of adiponectin, a hormone that helps your body stay sensitive to insulin. But here's where the problem begins. When you have too much white fat, especially the kind that builds up deep in your abdomen, known as visceral fat, it doesn't just sit there quietly. It becomes active. It becomes inflamed. And that inflammation interferes with the very hormones that keep your metabolism balanced. Adiponectin levels drop, insulin signaling becomes weaker, and your body starts to lose its ability to manage blood sugar effectively. This is why an expanding waistline is more than just a cosmetic issue. It's a warning sign. Because excess visceral fat is one of the strongest drivers of insulin resistance. So the goal isn't to eliminate fat entirely. It's to understand how much is too much and what happens when that balance is lost. Now here's where things take a surprising turn. Not all fat works against you. In fact, your body has a special type of fat that can actually help burn the dangerous kind. It's called brown fat. Unlike white fat, which stores energy, brown fat does the opposite. It burns energy to produce heat, a process known as thermogenesis. And it's not soft or jiggly like white fat. Brown fat is more compact, more active, and located deeper in your body around your neck, along your upper back, between your shoulder blades, and near your chest. Think of it like a built-in heater, or even better, like the flame on a gas stove. When brown fat turns on, it needs fuel to keep burning. And where does that fuel come from? It pulls it directly from your stored fat, especially the excess white fat that contributes to insulin resistance. So when brown fat is activated, It literally helps burn down the fat that's causing metabolic problems. This changes the entire perspective. Your body isn't just storing fat, it has a system designed to burn it. The problem is, in modern life, that system is often underused. But once you understand how brown fat works, you begin to realize something powerful. You're not stuck with excess fat. Your body already has the tools to fight back. So the question becomes, how do you actually turn this system on? How do you activate brown fat and unlock its fat burning potential? One of the most powerful triggers is something surprisingly simple: cold. When your body is exposed to lower temperatures, it has to work harder to maintain its core heat. And that's when brown fat steps in. It activates, burns energy, and generates warmth, pulling fuel directly from your fat stores. This is why practices like cold showers or cold exposure have gained so much attention. They're not just trends, they're tapping into a biological mechanism your body has always had. But cold isn't the only way. Your gut microbiome, the same system we talked about earlier, also plays a role. When your gut bacteria are healthy and well fed with fiber, they produce compounds that can help stimulate brown fat activity. So again, everything connects. What you eat influences your gut. Your gut influences your metabolism, and your metabolism determines how effectively your body burns fat. There are also certain foods and natural compounds that may support this process, though the foundation always comes back to overall lifestyle. Here's the key idea. You don't need extreme measures. You need consistent signals. A little cold exposure, regular movement, fiber-rich foods that nourish your gut. These are the inputs that tell your body to switch on its internal fat-burning system. Because once brown fat is activated, your body shifts from storing energy to using it. And that shift is where real metabolic change begins. Now, there's another powerful way to shift your body into fat-burning mode, and it doesn't require any special equipment, supplements, or complicated routines. It simply requires time. Specifically, time without eating. This is where intermittent fasting comes in. Every time you eat, your body shifts into storage mode. Insulin rises, and your metabolism focuses on storing incoming fuel, glucose, and fat for later use. But when you stop eating, something important happens. Your body switches gears. Without a constant supply of incoming fuel, insulin levels begin to drop. And as insulin drops, your body is finally able to access stored energy, especially fat. Now, here's the part most people don't realize. You already fast every single day. When you sleep, you're not eating. And during that time, your body naturally shifts into fat-burning mode. While you're resting, your metabolism is working behind the scenes, drawing on stored fat to keep your body running. In other words, you are burning fat while you sleep. This is not a trick. It's how your metabolism is designed to function. The problem is, most people interrupt this process. Late night snacks, early breakfasts, constant grazing. These habits shorten the window where your body can actually burn fat. But when you understand this cycle, you realize something powerful. You don't need to force fat burning. You just need to give your body the time to do what it already knows how to do. So, how do you actually extend this fat burning window in a practical, realistic way? It starts with a simple shift in your daily routine, one that most people overlook. Let's begin with the evening. After dinner, once you've finished your last meal of the day, that's your signal. No more food, no late night snacks, no mindless eating in front of a screen. From that moment on, your body begins transitioning into a fasting state. Now imagine this. If you finish dinner at 8 p.m. and go to bed at 11 p.m., that's already 3 extra hours where your body isn't receiving new fuel. During that time, insulin begins to drop, and your metabolism starts preparing to burn stored energy. Then you sleep. 7 to 8 hours, where your body continues that process, burning fat, stabilizing blood sugar, resetting your system. But here's where you can take it even further. When you wake up, instead of immediately eating breakfast, give your body a little more time. Get up, move around, go for a short walk, stretch, get some fresh air. By delaying your first meal, you extend that fasting window even more. Now you've created a 1-2 hour period or longer where your body is in fat burning mode. Half of your day spent using stored energy instead of constantly storing more. And the beauty of this approach? It doesn't require extreme dieting. It simply aligns with how your body was designed to function. Small timing changes can create powerful metabolic results. You can be doing everything right on the surface, eating well, exercising, sleeping better, and still feel like something is off. That's often because there are underlying factors quietly interfering with your system. These are what we call hidden stressors. They don't always show up clearly, and they don't always cause immediate symptoms. But over time, they can create a constant low-level strain that your body has to deal with every single day. Think about it this way. Your system is designed to protect and repair. But if it's constantly distracted dealing with things it shouldn't have to, it becomes less efficient at everything else. Some of these hidden factors can come from internal imbalances. Others can come from your environment. And because they're not obvious, they often go unnoticed for long periods of time. The problem isn't just their presence, it's the accumulation. Small disruptions, layered over time, slowly shift your system away from balance. And once that happens, your ability to regulate, repair, and defend begins to decline. This is why some people feel stuck. They're doing the right things, but not seeing the results they expect, because there's something in the background holding their system back. The key here is awareness, not assuming everything is fine just because there are no major symptoms, but being willing to look deeper, to identify what might be interfering, and to address it directly. Because once those hidden stressors are reduced or removed, something powerful happens. Your system no longer has to divide its attention. It can refocus on what it's meant to do: protect, repair, and maintain balance. And that shift alone can make a bigger difference than most people expect. Now we're moving into one of the most important parts of this entire strategy, and this is where everything becomes real: early detection. Because even if you build a strong foundation, support your system, and remove hidden stressors, there's still one critical advantage: you need seeing problems early, before they have a chance to grow. Most people think of screening in a very limited way. They wait for symptoms, or they rely on routine checks that only catch issues once they've already developed. But by that point, the situation is often more advanced than it needs to be. A more effective approach starts earlier, and it starts with signals. Not a diagnosis, not a confirmation. Just signals that something may be shifting beneath the surface. This is where modern testing can give you a powerful edge. Certain types of blood-based assessments can identify patterns that suggest increased risk or early changes. Again, this doesn't mean something is wrong, it means you have awareness, and that awareness is everything. If a signal shows up, the next step isn't panic, it's clarity. You move into imaging to see if there's anything structural, and only if something is found do you go deeper, using targeted evaluation to understand exactly what you're dealing with. This step-by-step approach changes the entire experience. Instead of discovering problems late, when options are limited, you're identifying them early when intervention can be simple, precise, and far less invasive. The key idea here is this: detection is not about fear, it's about control. When you know what's happening inside your body, you're no longer guessing, you're no longer waiting, you're acting with information. And that single shift from not knowing to knowing early can make one of the biggest differences in long-term outcomes. Now let's talk about what happens when something is actually found early, because this is where everything we've discussed starts to pay off. When a problem is detected at an early stage, the entire game changes. You're no longer dealing with something that has spread or become complex. You're dealing with something contained, localized, and far more manageable. And that opens the door to a completely different approach. Instead of aggressive, system-wide interventions, the focus can shift to precise, targeted action. Small, controlled steps that address the issue directly without overwhelming the rest of your body. This is what most people don't realize. Early detection isn't just about knowing sooner, it's about having better options. Options that are simpler, less invasive, and often far easier to recover from. At this stage, your body still has strong capacity to regulate, repair, and adapt. When you combine that natural resilience with targeted support, the process becomes far more efficient. You're not fighting an uphill battle, you're working with your system, not against it. And just as important, you can continue to monitor what's happening. You're not guessing whether something is improving, you're tracking it, watching trends, adjusting as needed, staying one step ahead instead of reacting too late. This creates a completely different experience. Instead of fear and uncertainty, there's clarity. Instead of feeling out of control, there's direction. Because when something is found early, you're not just reacting to a problem, you're intercepting it. And that difference between reacting late and acting early is what allows people to move forward with far greater confidence, knowing they've addressed the issue before it had a chance to take hold. Now, let's look at the other side of the spectrum. What happens when a condition is discovered at a more advanced stage? Because this is where the approach needs to become far more precise. When something has already progressed, it's no longer enough to rely on general strategies. At this level, every system in the body may be involved, and each case can look completely different from the next. What works for one person may not work for another. This is where a deeper layer of understanding becomes critical. Instead of treating everything the same way, the focus shifts to identifying exactly how that condition is behaving, how it grows, how it adapts, and what it responds to. Modern approaches now allow us to look at this in much greater detail than ever before, not just at the surface level, but at how the body is interacting with the problem internally. Patterns, signals, responses, all of these can be analyzed to guide more targeted decisions. The goal here isn't to overwhelm the system, it's to work with precision, to apply the right pressure in the right place, rather than using broad, generalized approaches that affect everything at once. At the same time, supporting the body remains essential. Even in more advanced situations, your internal systems still play a role in how well you respond, how you recover, and how you maintain stability throughout the process. This is where strategy matters most, not just what you do, but how specifically you do it. Because when you move from a one-size-fits-all mindset to a more individualized, targeted approach, something shifts. You're no longer reacting blindly, you're making informed, strategic decisions based on how your system actually functions. And that level of precision can make a meaningful difference, even in situations that seem far more complex at first. Now let's bring everything together because this is the moment where perspective changes. After everything we've covered, you might be wondering, can you completely eliminate the risk? Can you guarantee that nothing will ever go wrong? The honest answer is no. No system, no strategy, no approach can promise that with absolute certainty. And anyone who tells you otherwise isn't being realistic. But here's what is true, and this is what matters most. When you understand how your body actually works, when you build a strong foundation, support your internal systems, remove hidden stressors, and use the right kind of measurement and early detection, you shift yourself into a completely different category. You're no longer part of the majority that reacts too late. You're no longer relying on guesswork or hoping everything will be fine. You have a plan, and having a plan changes everything. It means you're actively supporting your system instead of unknowingly working against it. It means you're catching potential issues earlier, when they're far easier to handle. And it means you're making decisions based on awareness, not fear. Most people don't do this, not because they don't care, but because they don't know how. They follow general advice, assume it's enough, and only take things seriously when something forces them to. But you're now looking at this differently. You're seeing the structure behind it, the patterns, the leverage points that actually influence long-term outcomes. And when you operate from that level of awareness, your advantage becomes clear. Not because you're trying to control everything, but because you're finally working with your body in a way that supports it, strengthens it, and keeps it resilient over time. And that, more than anything else, is what sets you apart. Now here's the part that matters most, what you do next. Because information by itself doesn't change anything. Awareness only becomes powerful when you act on it. Everything you've just learned isn't meant to overwhelm you. It's meant to give you direction, a way to move forward with clarity instead of confusion. You don't need to change everything overnight. You don't need to be perfect. What matters is that you start step by step building a system that actually supports you. And more importantly, this isn't just about you. It's about the people around you, your family, the ones who trust you, who depend on you, who may not even realize what's possible until you show them. Because when one person understands this, it often creates a ripple effect. Others begin to pay attention. Others begin to take action. Think about how many problems could be avoided simply by acting earlier, by not waiting until something forces a reaction. That's the shift, from reactive to proactive. So take what you've learned and start applying it, improve your foundation, support your system, pay attention to the signals, measure what matters, and stay consistent over time. Because real results don't come from one big change, they come from small, intentional actions repeated over and over again. And if this message made you see your health differently, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who might still be waiting, still unsure, still unaware. Because the earlier this reaches them, the more it can help. And that's how real change begins, not just individually, but collectively.